that may join us during the morning. Mr. Esther Luis Laroche, Director of the Regional UNESCO Office for Latin America and the Caribbean. Macarena Carroza, Executive Director of the Municipal Corporation for the Administration of the Valparaiso World Heritage Site. And Cecilia Barahona, Director of Heritage Services of the National Heritage Service. This second day, once again, will bring together international experts and the manager of heritage sites and key aspects for Latin America and the Caribbean in order to exchange experience and best practices in managing the risk of fire in times of climate change. And also, as part of this instance, as of tomorrow, November the 13th, to Friday the 15th, we will have a training of a group of administrators of cultural heritage in Latin America and the Caribbean, focused on the use and implementation of the UNESCO Guide for the Risk of Fire in Natural and Cultural Heritage Sites. Will provide practical tools for the mitigation and response to fires at heritage sites. We remind you that this conference is being broadcast over the YouTube channel of UNESCO Santiago, and that this will be recorded and uploaded to this same channel. We will begin with a summary and reflection on yesterday by Antonia Poster, who is a culture consultant of the UNESCO office in Santiago. This will be followed by a keynote speech, Fostering Fire Resilience in a Changing Climate Through the Shared Heritage of Humanity, by Juan Cusanero Elias, community member of the Cachigel people of Guatemala. This will be followed by Session 3, Engaging Local Communities and Mainstreaming Indigenous Knowledge, moderated by Christopher Ballard, Associate History Professor at the National University of Australia. And after coffee, we will continue with the next session on Building a Resilient Future for Heritage Policy Coherence and Cross-Sectoral Cooperation, moderated by Yuri Peshkov, Culture Program Specialist, UNESCO Kingston Office. And so we will now recognize Antonia Postel, who is a consultant of the UNESCO office in Santiago. Thank you, Antonia. The first day of this conference was a very enriching day when we were able to exchange thoughts and share concerns with various actors that have specialized in a common topic of increasing need and urgency. That is how the cultural and natural heritage is resilient to fire in the context of climate change, together with experts from Argentina, Australia, Barbados, Brazil, Chile, Croatia, Egypt, Spain, United States, Mongolia, Peru, and Uganda. We have been able to learn of different experiences and approaches that from such different localities share similarities and may lead to a very valuable exchange of knowledge. In the context of launching the UNESCO Guide for Fire Risk Management, we've been able to lead to topics as the risk to heritage of fire and the response to incendiary hazards and the construction of a resilient future through policies, training, awareness, and intersectoral cooperation. We have seen that, unfortunately, fire of these heritage sites are on the rise, which requires implementing mechanisms for more effective response. In view of these challenges, measures have been considered that aim to strengthen the preparation of those who face these fires with appropriate tools, improving monitoring and planning mechanisms, and having opportunities for continuous learning in order to respond more effectively and in a coordinated manner. Some of the ideas that have come up at this conference are the relevance of collaboration, and in this sense, the aim is to learn of the existing heritage, identifying existing threats, working together with communities, either rescuing traditional knowledge as well as initiatives for awareness building, and especially regarding the prevention for disaster management, and where, although it is not necessary for communities to be involved directly in combating fire, for the restoration, they do play a key role in initiatives such as early detection and warning or work for maintenance and repair. And so it is essential that communities may learn, appreciate, and care for their heritage. We should also highlight the very valuable exchange among peers in the framework of this conference, and where more than 20 experts on protection of heritage in Latin America and the Caribbean are gathered at this conference, and in turn highlight the participation and interest of the civil society and persons of different parts of the world who have met with us over the online connection. And with these ideas, we're hoping that this conference may continue to give us further inputs to deepen on how, in different areas of the world, people have worked to manage fire in cultural and natural heritage sites. Thank you, Antonia, for your thoughts. And now we will continue with the keynote speech on fostering fire resilience in a changing climate through the shared heritage of humanity by Juan Cusanero Elias, community member of the Cachiquel Maya people of Guatemala. Juan, the floor is yours. Good morning, and I hope you have a day full of energy. I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to share a few ideas with you. Basically, the issue is how to increase the resilience of cultural heritage in a changing climate situation and where fire is crucial. And so here you can see, suggestively, a sacred game that we have at a Maya altar in Guatemala, just to appreciate the fire in its different dimensions. I'm Juan Cruzamero, Maya Cachiquel. Thank you. I would like to share with you our interest in the trilogy that has been addressed today. For example, here we have heritage. There's cultural heritage and natural heritage. It is of interest to maintain and keep up these areas, and we want the heritage to be resilient to the impacts of climate change, specifically fire. And at the same time, we come with the challenge of addressing and incorporating indigenous knowledge to this process so that it may be a factor that enhances the efficacy of these strategies. And in the same way, we here have Valparaíso. For me, this is new because it is not part of my context. Valparaíso is a place in remote Chile and where we now have the opportunity to visit. But reflections as to what is Valparaíso truly? What does it mean? What is its value? And so there is a key aspect here where we need to reflect on the tangible aspects of Valparaíso as well as the intangibles of Valparaíso. So it is important to reflect on the place, the heritage that we're focusing on. What does it truly mean? Because cultural heritage could mean a lot or little, depends on who interprets it and also the amount of information they have. And so here I return to this in greater detail. For example, Valparaíso could be understood as a nice, a pretty place. That's one interesting aspect, yes. And also it may be a tourist site of great interest. Also, it could be a port area, which of course makes sense. It is part of its history. And also, it is a world heritage. It is a cultural heritage and a natural heritage. I don't know, but it is part of the heritage of humanity, a world heritage. And yesterday it was said that when heritage is undergoing a crisis, the local inhabitants suffer this, but this is also a pain for entire humanity. It is a key aspect. It transcends its value. And also, it could also be that for someone, Valparaiso is Mother Earth, a much greater concept. Or it could be an ancestral territory. Regardless of the concept, it is important to be clear. I am here to reflect. I do know that here everyone is experts on the topic, but I'm here to reflect. That is my contribution. For on some aspects to be addressed that are crucial. And there is another aspect here, and that is that Valparaiso may be a matter of pride for its inhabitants. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Or maybe for others, it is not so much a matter of collective pride, as happened in Guatemala a long time ago. There is an athlete there called Doroteo Guamuch Flores. But on account of the shame the name represented for most of the world, he was called Mateo Flores, and they took away the Guamuch name because it was seen as a matter of shame. This does happen sometimes. The image that we want to project either fills us with pride or fills us with shame. It all depends.
And here, for instance, I am showing you this pyramid. In Guatemala, we have Tikal, which is an emblem for the world. And it brings to our mind the value of the elements of our territory. That's why I'm putting it here. And what if we look at an image that represents Valparaiso? There are several images because I understand that we are part of an Asian territory here. I'm not fully aware of those aspects. But I also want to talk about fire, which is an element that we have. And with it, we see that fire is a sacred element. Some time ago, I was given a document that talks about good and bad fire. But the truth is that there isn't any bad or good fire because it is sacred. And if you look at it in a negative or positive way, it has to do with the perspective of the person, not the fire itself, because the heart of the earth is fire. And it is also cosmic energy and vital energy. Each one of us has 37 degrees in our bodies internally. It's temperature, it's fire. And the sun as well is fire. So fire is present everywhere. Fire is life. It is the energy that moves us. Otherwise, the earth would be static. We have the tectonic plates phenomenon, and it's part of how life works in our planet. Fire is also a source of knowledge. In the beginning, I was showing you the sacred fire. The guides know how to interpret fire, and it conveys a certain message. We also have it as the warmth of a home. Right now at homes we have our own heating systems, but it used to be fire, and fire represents family unity. Around a fireplace, the knowledge from the old people is conveyed to new generations, and we have all those conversations around fire. And it is also an evolution instrument, a long history. Because now it is difficult to eat raw meat. In some cases, we see that, but generally speaking, we cannot eat raw meat. It can hurt us. And fire came in to help in the evolution of history. We are who we are due to fire. But up to which point are we managing or handling it in a correct way? Fire is also referred to as the heart of the sky or the heart of the land. That is fire. Here we have a symbology for it. What I'm talking about actually is that everything has an identity. Valparaiso, fire, the fire, who we are, and everything. There is an identity involved in fire, who we actually are. And now I will continue talking about the 4 major elements from the Maya cosmovision. And I know that it is not exclusive to the Maya people, because there are some other peoples that have used it as well. We talk about the 4 major elements. The earth. This is the image that I found, but this is actually the earth, or water, wind, and here we have fire. So it's the 4 elements. Based on this element that we have here, this could be a hurricane, but a hurricane for the Maya people is called huracán. It means 1 foot because that's the shape of it. It's like it has a foot. Huracán. And in English, the word is similar, something like hurricane, I believe. So it's basically the same. But what does that actually mean? It means that there is a sacred element involved that is characterized here. And this is myself, but another part of myself is the wind. So I'm not superior than wind, fire, or water. There is a characterization. There is a horizontal relationship. It is another being. If the wind has a foot, then I also have a foot, and that's how we work with the rest of the elements. The same thing with fire and each one of the elements that I just showed. And here, those elements need to have a certain balance, but currently we have lost that balance. Fire has always existed, and so have the rest of the elements. However, climate change has come to create a problem, but we created climate change as humanity, and now we need to see how we solve the issue. And it's a good thing that we're concerned about this and that we're taking action. There is a cosmic view of this, where we need to go back to balance, and we need to find balance from within us. For instance, those people that intentionally set fire on a forest are lacking balance. We need to create a greater level of awareness to avoid this happening. We need to work on awareness. And also, we see that there is a cosmic balance that is always working. Whatever we do here, this cosmic system continues its course. But now it is important to look at the values, knowledge, and practices, like a greater thing of philosophy. And here, I want to talk about traditional systems. What I'm trying to focus on is the following. Maybe expectations are not moving towards that side. Maybe you expect me to come here and talk about techniques to put out fires in a practical way. And yes, it is true, but we need to focus on the system. I will mention 3 systems in that respect. One of them is, for instance, in the Quiché culture. I am Cachiquel, but since Guatemala is so small, there are 22 indigenous languages spoken. So Cachcor, it's a Quiché concept. Quiché means many trees. Then we have the Cachcol concept, which involves pain. Therefore, this community does community service for 1 year. That is how the order of things are. So they do community service for 1 year, and if they start very young, they may have to repeat the service later on in life. But usually speaking, it is once in a lifetime for 1 year, where 100% of their time they work in community service to take care of the forests. So there is committed work involved. That's why it's called kashkol. It's called pain, sacrifice. And that is a very important system, because during this kashkol community service, people look out for the risks of fire, looting, any type of risk that involves either cultural or natural heritage. And we also have the pakuch system. This is a cachiquel concept, mutual support between members of a community. In the community, when someone builds their house, this person doesn't go to the neighbors and ask for help. The neighbors come to this person to help them build their house. But if there is someone else that wants to build their house, then the rest of the community also helps. And if there is a fire, people won't just remain there staring at it. They go and fight it. There is also a concept called chahinek. Chahinel means someone watching. So this person is in charge of monitoring and control. The chahinel is like a guard who's always looking out for things. But within a community, some time ago, there was a case in that area where the community has a large forest, and there are several communities surrounding it. And they act as chahinel, looking out for what is happening. But one day, a municipal program provided park rangers, and they came in there with their weapons, and the community realized this. The municipality implemented that activity without community consultation. And suddenly, they saw that those were park rangers hired by the municipality. And they get a salary, people said. And what about us? We do this all the time, and we do it for free. So it was something perverse, a situation that we must take into account, because the chahinel service or system is vital for the communities, because people live there. They're not just there by chance. That is the place where they live. So they act as informers. And this is important to consider. Here, there is a key aspect, and I'm almost finishing here. There is a key aspect of traditional governance. Yesterday, I heard about governance, which is a very important thing. But here, we see that governance in indigenous communities is many times comprised of traditional authorities, which come from the community itself. And they have their appointment systems, their periods, etc. That's why they call it Akchame Chame, which means authority. And there's also women involved in the process. And we also have the community assembly. This is not a new thing. It is how the community gathers. And they gather to obtain information, to make decisions where authorities are appointed and where they provide them with support. And we also have the guides. Here you can see a couple of senior citizens in front of a lagoon in Chicaval on the western side. This water is also sacred, as I said. But there's a key thing here that is not written. And it has to do with the fact that all of this is ruled by traditional rules that are already established. And they are either written or they're kept in the memory of the community. But they must be met. It is a valid rule that must be met. And if you do not meet that rule, then you will be sanctioned. There are cases when people or families are asked to leave the communities. And there are some other cases when a person or the family resists to the rules, they are their water is cut off. There are communities that work in that way. And if you do not have water in your home, you cannot live because it's a basic thing that you need. So here is where rules operate. But there's another key aspect. For instance, we talk about fire, and we say that there are many stakeholders involved. It's important to know about these stakeholders and their role, what role they have, because not everyone has the same role. But in the case of communities, just to share this piece of information with you, many times traditional roles are assigned based on the energy of each person. And how can you identify the energy of a person? And this is through the Mayan calendar. The day in which the person was born, that is where the energy is assigned. The day of Chiquin is the day of a bird.
And that calendar, it was not just someone's occurrence, no, but it does have a backdrop, because if you analyze whether the personality corresponds of that person with the energy, it does. And so if people are born on a certain day, are able to speak very in a different way, and the person has a discourse that plays well with others, and so they are good for this sort of topic for communication. But if you put up someone who has a communication role, but that it does not have to do with their features, their energy, they will do their job, maybe, but they will not uh, do so fully. And so now a cat, the energy of the cat is like a network, very good for to be articulate, to create agreements. It's people who have a facility to do that. It's important to visualize it. This is done in the community. I'm just sharing a specific case with you, and there is an area where they do that. And since they are 20 nawals, 20 different types of energy, so there is energy from 1 to 13. And so it depends on the energy that is combined, and you can draw conclusions. And whoever can play a more accurate profile of this is the guides, the spiritual guides, because they interpret in greater depth. They are able to compare. And this is not witchery. No, it is a traditional matter that is done in an ancestral manner. And so here I would merely like to show you that there are things that to combat fire, we cannot live in a magical world and say, how do you do things? No, no, no. You go out and do things. You work with the firefighters, the communities, and everything. But there is a cultural backdrop to everything that is done. And so, for example, here they plan these burns. This is done within a conventional system as well. But they do this according to their own particular calendar. They plan it because somehow managed fire does not generate a negative effect. For example, it can be done, must approach it naturally. There are plants that, on account of the fire, of the seeds, with one of these planned burns, this sort of eats away the outer part of the seed and facilitates its germination. So this is done for crops as well. This is part of what is usual. And so here we have some pictures of the monitoring. I don't know if you're able to distinguish it, but this is monitoring done at the Totonicapán community. They monitor. There is a major monitoring and a minor monitoring. The minor monitoring, in this case, is done by those that are responsible for the cash core. But the greater monitoring is done by the community at large. I don't know. Not everyone goes, of course, but maybe 700, 800 people go, and they they visit and go over the land. They do a journey, old people and young people, for the young to learn where the borders are. If there is a certain plant or tree or rock formation, they get to know it and they learn from the elders. And the more they know, the more they're able to care for it. So here we have these community outings where they monitor the land. And then here, this is a natural regeneration. And we have sprouts as well. But there's another aspect that I would also like to show you. For example, when we speak of the 4 elements that I mentioned earlier, for example, sometimes we use, traditionally speaking, we use wind because it is possible to control the direction of the wind, and so they know how to use it to combat fire. They also use earth, they also use water. So these are the elements, and sometimes they even use fire to combat fire. Imagine. So all of this is managed, all 4 elements. They are worked with in such a way that, well, that is not the aim of this presentation. But yes, to put it to you, the approach, it is important to visualize when you consider including the indigenous people, because the indigenous people, the first thing they see in order to feel part of this is that their territory be recognized. That is their rationale, their raison d'etre. The plans, for example, cannot have aspects that breaches their ancestral logic. Places sometimes have their own names, and there's a tremendous historical content there, and that must be included in the plans for this to be culturally taken on. So here I have some conclusions, not all of them, but some of them. In this case, it's important to bear in mind the cosmogonic or creation myth vision of fire. Fire is neither good nor bad, it is sacred. And fires occur on account of a particular condition. So we need to approach it appropriately. And here we have integral or comprehensive fire management. This is a matter of fire. The other thing is water. And I was talking to some colleagues earlier in that the indigenous people have a comprehensive approach. They mix up everything, they articulate everything and connect it. And there are certain things. Sometimes people do surveys. They ask us a question and we say yes, because that is how we see it. And so engagement of actors with specific roles, the collective aspect is very important too. We must integrate, not separate. Traditional governance, we must bear it in mind. And so with this, Mateo Chiwe, thank you very much.